So since 2015, it seems like December is now the official month of Star Wars, which I guess will be broken next year, but you get what I mean. Disney has done an amazing job of getting people back into this universe, and now these films are bigger than ever. Everyone gets so excited when one rolls around. I personally never grew up with Star Wars, but I really enjoy the originals and just this world in general, and so far I'm having a lot of fun with the new ones. So now that the 8th episode in the main saga has hit cinemas, let's talk about it. And as always, first part of this review is going to be non-spoilers, and then later on, after a warning, I'll get into the spoilers. I know people are very particular about spoilers with these films especially, so don't worry. So yeah, the hype around this film was pretty huge, and I'd say, for me at least, it totally lived up to it. I had a great time with this. The new trilogy cast once again kills it here. Daisy Ridley is great as the hero, Adam Driver is great as the conflicted villain, John Boyega is just great in general and is still really funny as Finn, and Oscar Isaac got a lot more to do this time around, which is great to see. The old trilogy cast members that show up here are equally good. Carrie Fisher is still fantastic as Leia, and Mark Hamill nails it as Luke. It feels like a natural progression of the character we know from the originals, but with quite a few new layers to him. The new additions of big actors are just as good as you'd expect, but Kelly Marie Tran, who I hadn't seen in anything before this, is also a standout here. And everyone else, from Ginger Nazi to Andy Serkis mocap character number 723, are really good too. Now this film is directed by Rian Johnson, who I mainly know from Breaking Bad, and he brought so much to this film. For one, the camera work. There are some really creative shots in here, and also just a lot of visually stunning shots, like ones you'd want to print out and frame and put on your wall, kind of visually stunning. Not only that, but in terms of the story, he also brings something new to the table. A lot of people's biggest complaint with Episode 7 was that it was just a rehash of Episode 4, and while this certainly shares story elements with The Empire Strikes Back, it definitely felt like its own thing to me. It feels familiar enough to fit right into this world, but is different enough to be interesting. It takes risks and does stuff that some people might not like, with new ideas. While I felt the last one played it really safe, this does some new kind of weird stuff, which I loved. No spoilers, but there are some weird moments in this film in terms of this world, and that makes this feel so much more unique. This is also pretty well paced, it's quite long, but it never felt like a drag, and even though at the very start it felt like it was moving a little fast, it didn't really bother me in the long run. This movie gives us new stuff with these characters, the new and the old, and the interactions and relationships that build here feel believable and earned. The Rey-Luke interactions are really fun, and never once did it feel fake to me, they just worked really well together. The movie's story, in addition to not just feeling like a rehash, is just a good story with good characters. The conflicts are interesting, the characters have arcs, it's exciting action and chases and fun space stuff mixed with characters you care about, and a story you're invested in. Forget Star Wars, this is just what films in general should strive towards. There are really great character moments here, some that may even bring a little tear to your eye. Yeah, this movie has some decently emotional moments. This film has a few different plotlines going on, but it never feels jumbled or too crowded. Each one serves its own purpose and is engaging and fun to watch. Back to Rian Johnson for a second. While there is some clunky exposition, one or two times, a lot of the storytelling here is done in clever ways with the show don't tell rule. There's a lot of information given through visuals. Something else I loved about this is that it expands the world. That's something that I've always loved about Star Wars, how massive this universe is, and the weird creatures, and all the crazy stuff that inhabits it. And here, we actually see new stuff. I won't spoil any of it, but there are new planets and worlds and settings and creatures, as opposed to the last one where I felt like we just visited pretty similar locations to ones we'd already seen. By the way, I want to stress real quick, because I realize it sounds like I'm really hating on The Force Awakens. I love that film. I just felt it kind of lacked in creativity in terms of the story, which this film did not. Bottom line is, this is an amazing world, and I'm glad to see it expanded. This movie does play on nostalgia quite a bit, but not to the point where it's annoying or distracting. And when it does play on it, it's effective. Like, I don't have a ton of nostalgia for this or anything, but even I get a kick out of the Millennium Falcon flying into that booming Star Wars music. This is great for people who love Star Wars, obviously, they're gonna go nuts over this, but it's also great for those who don't know as much about it, and great for those like myself, who are more in the middle. Sure, it's set in the series with a massive fan base, but outside of that, it's just an engaging story with compelling characters that is super entertaining. This movie feels very Star Wars-y, but also new at the same time. It nails that Star Wars aesthetic with that 70s looking tech, but it still feels like a modern film. Also, without spoiling anything, just saying, this film makes the Jedi and the Force and all that so much cooler than, say, other entries in the franchise. Keeping it mysterious, but still offering some explanations, great balance here. Now, I've talked a lot about the story and characters and all that, but in terms of the more blockbustery stuff, this film is super entertaining. Like, it is so much fun to watch. The action here is amazing, the classic Star Wars space battles or the more personal lightsaber stuff, it's incredible. The movie on the whole manages to stay really exciting for its very long runtime. The visual effects, for the most part, are also spectacular. Most of the CGI is great, and the sets and more practical effects are amazing. More Muppety kind of stuff for Star Wars with the Porgs here is great to see. The music is of course phenomenal, with the new stuff and old stuff. And all in all, I just want to stress how much fun I had watching this. I love an adventure, and this maintained this sense of energy throughout. It's not only well made, but also thoroughly entertaining through and through. It never got boring to me. Whether it's a comedic scene, or a serious dark moment, or a big action set piece. It's just a very fun time. Speaking of which, this was a lot more comedic than I expected. But I didn't have a problem with that. The jokes pretty much all the time worked, and it didn't undercut serious moments with comedy. The comedy came when it felt natural for it to come. The movie still made room for the more emotional moments, or the more epic moments, which we'll talk about more in spoilers. Now, the last thing I want to point out here is a credit to both the film and the marketing. There are so many genuine shocks and surprises in this film. So many things that I had no idea were coming, and I love that. That's good on the film for making effective twists that made sense and caught me off guard, and also on the trailers for giving away so little in terms of plot, surprises, and just footage in general. I did stop watching any promo stuff after that second trailer, so maybe the TV spots give everything away, I don't know. But main trailer-wise, that everyone's gonna see, this is exactly how to market a film. Even a reveal that I thought they gave away in the trailer, there is so much more to it than that. So please, studios, take notes. For this kind of film, where a lot could be ruined, this is the perfect way to do this. Now, as much as I love this film, there are a few problems. For one, most of the visual effects are amazing, but there are a few moments where either the CGI or the green screen is a little obvious, and sometimes it started to look slightly prequel-like to me. Only about once or twice, don't worry, but still, worth pointing out. Also, the Snoke effect is so weird, because I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, that looks really good, but just something seems off about it. Like it doesn't seem like he's a real tangible thing standing there. I don't know, maybe it has something to do with the uncanny valley. There were also a few really cheesy lines in this, like some of them totally work and are kind of emotional, but some are just a little cringeworthy. And finally, probably my biggest problem with this is one specific moment that's a huge spoiler, so I can't say it now. But it's just one moment that felt really cheap to me, and I was just like, this seems a bit like the movie's cheating here with its own rules. Again though, we'll talk about that in spoilers. So speaking of which, before we get into the spoilers, I'll give a little conclusion to the non-spoiler part. Star Wars The Last Jedi was pretty much exactly what I was hoping it would be. It was fun, entertaining, exciting, with good characters and a good story that didn't just feel like a total remake of another film. As someone who really likes Star Wars but isn't a mega fan, I loved it. Someone who is a huge fan of this stuff, I imagine is gonna go crazy over this. I'll give The Last Jedi a 9.5 out of 10. Okay, now we're talking spoilers. If you haven't seen the film yet, click off now, cause there's a lot of cool stuff to spoil in this film. You've been warned. Firstly, a bunch of Luke stuff. Luke's return at the end, where he faced basically the entire First Order, was so amazing. And there's one shot of him facing off against those AT-AT looking machines, and it's incredible. I also liked Luke's death. It was different from Han Solo's death, where he went with peace and a sense of completion, and I really liked that. Great growth for his character. Now, that one main thing I really didn't like was that Luke was a Force hologram who could interact with tangible things but was still a hologram. Okay, again, not the biggest Star Wars guy, but is that a thing the Jedi can do? Force holograms? Because I don't really remember it being set up. I guess it's supposed to be a similar situation to Kylo Ren and Rey sort of talking through the Force and eventually touching each other, and then Kylo actually appears there, just taken to the extreme. But if that's the case, I didn't feel like it was set up enough to fully explain that. You don't need a 5-minute scene going over how he can do it, but just for a film that otherwise I felt I could follow and understand the rules of, this kind of felt like they were cheating with their own rules. And while it got better the more I thought about it, especially in the moment, I felt, oh, that's kind of a cheap way to get out of this. But hey, again, maybe I missed something in a crucial setup to that twist. The actual fight between Kylo and Luke, though, was awesome, and it did a great job of showing an old man being able to still move quickly and be a badass, and not making it look stupid or ridiculous. I absolutely loved Yoda as a Force ghost. In a time where every big film has every big surprise spoiled by leaks or set photos or whatnot, I had no idea it was coming, and it was such a pleasant surprise. Really funny. Frank Oz still does the voice perfectly, and I'm glad that even though it was probably done with CGI, he still looked like the Muppet from the 80s. Great stuff. There are some other really big and surprising reveals in this. Firstly, Snoke is not any insane character from the past, he's just some prick who gets Darth Mauled. That scene was clever and really well done, and again, surprising. And then, after all this speculation for so long, it turns out Rey's parents are nobodies, just some junk collectors or something. Now, they might change that in the next film, like it turns out her father really is Obi-Wan Kenobi or something, but I honestly kind of like the idea that she's just a nobody, that there isn't some intertwining destiny linking her to all of this. As they showed, anyone can access the Force, I think. It's a balance in everything, and you just have to really concentrate. Again, maybe that's not exactly it, but regardless, I did enjoy the twist that, hey, her parents don't really matter. Just some other things. I like the scene where Rey's in the cave and she sees like a billion Reys or whatever. It was a good example of what I mean when I say this did some weirder stuff with this world. I like the return of Phasma, still a bit like Boba Fett, where she looks awesome but doesn't really do much, but at least she got a little more. I honestly thought Leia had died early on when she was shot into space, but using the Force to pull her back to the ship was an interesting way to keep her in the film. Also, I don't think we've ever seen a Star Wars character actually in outer space before, so that was kinda cool. The very end, with what was implied to be the new Resistance, I guess, with these young kids on the casino planet, one of which has the Force. At least I'm pretty sure I saw him move that broom. I wasn't huge on that. That was one of the parts that seemed a little cheesy to me. But hey, I'm excited to see where this goes in episode 9. The finale on the Salt Planet was pretty great and pretty beautiful with that scenery, and that double lightsaber battle after Snoke's death was amazing. It felt new and fresh and like something we hadn't seen before, and it was just an incredible action scene. Also, just so you know, here in Denmark, people in the cinema are relatively more quiet, like there's usually no cheering or anything like that in a film. But even here, when Rey throws the lightsaber to Kylo Ren and he catches it and basically shoots a guy through the head with it, people started clapping. It was that cool. So those were my thoughts on Star Wars Episode 8. What did you think of this? Let me know all of your thoughts down below in the comments. While you're at it, be sure to like this video, check out my Instagram and Twitter at BHL_Hudson, check out this podcast about movies and TV and whatnot I do every other Friday with a friend of mine. It's called the Poorly Planned Podcast, and subscribe for more videos like the one you just watched. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.